Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the car market and how it is officially collapsing. Like, it's pretty crazy, the rapid decline we're experiencing, way faster than what I initially thought. But before we get into this video, as always, if you're going to save time and money for the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And if you want to see more videos like this, then I recommend that you subscribe because I post videos like this every single day. Let's get into it. Now we're going to start off by going over some general trends that are happening right now within the car market, and these statistics are kind of worrying. And then we're going to dive into what I'm actually seeing on the ground. Now the reason why the second thing is actually important is I filmed for about 40 different dealerships, and so I have access to a ton of information. I'm constantly talking to these different dealers about, hey, what's happening within the car market? What's happening within your specific brand? And I feel like I have better access than anyone else because nobody really goes around and talks to 40 different dealers that have a number of different brands under their umbrella. But anyways, broader statistics. So first off, we are now tracking to sell closer to 14 million cars for the 2022 sales year, which on the surface doesn't sound too bad, right? That sounds like a massive amount of cars, but in reality, that is pretty low historically. So before the pandemic, it was pretty normal for the car market to have about 17 million units sold per year. After the pandemic, that dropped down to about 15-ish million, and the reason was because of production issues, not because of demand. And we all know that because, well, prices started skyrocketing because of all of that demand. But this demand has been declining at a rapid rate for the 2022 sales year, and that's why everyone has pulled back their forecast by a massive amount. A lot of people thought that this was going to be the year that we were going to break 16 million units, and yeah, that's not going to be the case at this point. We'll be lucky if we get 14.5 million units sold this year. And this is happening for a number of different reasons. And before I dive into those reasons, I do want to mention that this isn't like a uniform issue. And what I mean by that is some areas don't actually have any decline. Other areas have about a 10% decline on average, and that seems to be pretty uniform across the country. But there are some areas that are really hard hit where they have like a decline of 20 to 30%. And so you got to understand this is definitely going to be a regional thing, because I always get comments where people will say, oh, but I see my dealerships in this area and they don't have any cars and they have all their cars marked up. And it's like, well, you just happen to live in, well, I guess the crappy area in terms of getting good deals in today's market, where your area still has tons of demand. But anyways, the reason this is happening is, first off, interest rates. Interest rates have increased by a massive amount. Now, obviously, everyone knows that there was a bunch of stimulus packages released over the course of the pandemic, and with those stimulus packages, the federal government made it so that it was free to borrow money. And so interest rates were really, really low on auto loans. You literally could get like an interest rate of under 3% on an 84-month loan, and 84-month loans are pretty common in the auto industry at this point. It's pretty much what everyone goes for. And even when I was working as a salesman 3 years ago, that's what everyone was getting, is 84-month loans. It was pretty rare for me to see someone go for a 60 or 72-month loan. But anyways, that's what was happening over the last 2 years, is 84-month loans for like less than 3%. But now, if you want that same 84-month loan, it's closer to like 7+%, which is a huge difference. Just to give you guys an idea of how much this changes the payment, if you take the average price of a brand new car, which is close to like $50,000 nowadays, your payment is going to be somewhere in like the $700 a month range. Okay. Now, if you go from a 3% interest rate to a 7-ish% interest rate, your payment's going to jump up by like $100 on that $50,000 car, roughly. That, is a pretty big swing for a lot of people. I mean, some people might say, oh, well, you just have to work a few more days, work a little bit more overtime before the payment, but still, $100 is $100. And again, that's monthly, right? So that ends up making every single vehicle now cost like, well, every single $50,000 vehicle, right, which is the average price for a brand new vehicle, costs like $1,200 more per month. But it's not just interest rates. Vehicle prices have also steadily increased by a rapid rate this year with new cars. It's absolutely crazy. most new cars now cost anywhere from 10 to 15% more than what they cost last year from an MSRP perspective. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So if we take our same example of that $50,000 vehicle, well, now that $50,000 vehicle actually costs closer to like $60,000. And so you take the $60,000 sales price and you also take the increased interest rate at 7% instead of 3%, and now you're going from like a $700 a month car payment to closer to $1,000 a month. And so yeah, you can see that it adds up very, very quickly. And so it's making it so cars just frankly aren't affordable for a lot of people. It's kicked a lot of people out of the market. And I know a lot of you that follow these videos happen to be fans of Ram trucks. And so I quickly ran some stuff with the Ram configurator from a number perspective just to see, you know, a brand that we're all a fan of, to see how crazy it's gotten. And prior to the pandemic, I could purchase a Ram 1500 Limited after discounts and rebates somewhere in the $50,000 range. That same truck today, I would have to spend over $70,000. So prior to the pandemic, I could purchase a Limited hypothetically and have a $700 a month truck payment, whereas now if I want that same truck, I have to have a payment of like $1,100 per month. Like it's crazy, the increase. And obviously we all know that wages haven't increased that amount, right? So it doesn't exactly add up. And let's talk about what I've actually been seeing on the ground. And I've noticed that there's a big distinction between luxury and non-luxury stores when it comes to what is happening. So with non-luxury stores, it seems like a lot of them are actually starting to get inventory, and they're actually starting to have to slightly discount a lot of their product. And their salespeople are telling them that they actually have to be salespeople again, in the sense that they have to sell people on the car because interest rates are super high, the prices have increased a massive amount, and because there's cars on the ground, there's competition. And so yeah, it's almost like non-luxury stores are kind of going back to what things were like before the pandemic. They're still not quite there. Inventory is still at an all-time low, but there are a lot of manufacturers you can go to and you can choose different vehicles on the lot. You don't actually have to order a car. But the thing that I have noticed with these non-luxury stores is they're still doing a ton of orders because people have kind of changed their mentality. They don't want to just go in and buy whatever on the lot. They want to buy exactly what they want to buy from a color perspective, option perspective, all that kind of stuff. Like they just want what they want. And so these dealers are still pretty heavy with orders, but they have inventory, so there are discounts that are happening. Now, what I've typically seen with luxury brands, however, is that inventory is still extremely low. A lot of the luxury stores that I film for basically just don't have anything on the ground. And if they do have something on the ground, it maybe is there for a couple of days before it ends up selling. And so pricing power is still really strong. It's not nearly as strong as what it was like last year, but it's still pretty strong. I still see some pricing power over MSRP on certain product, but it's not, like I said, nearly as high as what it used to be. I used to see markups on certain vehicles of like, you know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over a sticker, whereas now it's like $5,000 or $10,000, which, you know, is not nothing, but it's definitely a lot less than what it used to be. And so the thing that I'd really like to hit home with this is that there is definitely a divide between luxury and non-luxury, but that is definitely a generalized look at the whole situation because some manufacturers are faring better than others. I mean, two examples that I can give you guys is with Land Rover, there is like no inventory still. Like it's really bad. There's really long wait lists for pretty much everything from a product perspective. And so it's just crazy. They don't have anything. But then with a manufacturer like BMW, they not only have pretty quick turnover times in terms of getting cars built for customers, but you know that manufacturer is starting to get a little bit of inventory, not a lot, but there's there are some vehicles starting to sit in the lot, and then Audi seems to be in the same place, and Mercedes is mixed. It just depends on the product. Like their non-AMG cars seem to slowly be stacking up, but anything that has an AMG badge is still just like instantly gone off the lot. And a comment that I quickly want to make on this is I think that this divide is partly because of what happened over the course of the pandemic, because people that typically purchase non-luxury cars, right, make a little bit less money than people that typically purchase luxury cars make a little bit more money. And we all know that we had a K-shaped recovery where people that were in lower income brackets really hurt after the pandemic, and the people in higher income brackets just kept making more and more and more money. And so it makes sense why there's still a ton of demand on luxury items and not nearly as much demand on non-luxury items in this market. With all this information, what should you do as a buyer? First off, know that you have negotiating power now. I understand that for the last few years, there was like no negotiating power, but it's shifting from being a seller's market to a buyer's market. And so if a dealership tells you this is the price and that's it, I wouldn't just take that. Like I would go back to kind of like the old school method of actually negotiating a car deal, because again, demand is a lot lower than it used to be. We have super high interest rates, prices have increased a massive amount. Like there's a lot going against dealers at this point. And so they really have to work, quite a bit harder than they did over the last few years to actually earn your business. And so what I'd have to say as just kind of like a generalization is if you're purchasing a non-specialty vehicle, just a regular run-of-the-mill car, then I would try to negotiate a little bit off of MSRP, definitely MSRP. Like I would not pay anything over MSRP, but maybe get a little bit of a discount off of MSRP at this point. I don't think the discount would be huge, but I think that it would be pretty reasonable to think that you could get just a little bit at this point. Again, it's going to depend manufacturer to manufacturer, supply and demand and all that kind of stuff. But generalization. Now, when it comes to more specialty product, I would not pay over MSRP for anything at this point because values on specialty items are just rapidly declining, and it's pretty crazy to see. So a really good example is with the new Ford Bronco Raptor. It was just released to the public in terms of people actually taking delivery of their Bronco Raptor orders. And they are asking crazy amounts of money over MSRP, which is pretty normal, right? That's what happened with the F-150 Raptor when it was first released. That's what happened with the Bronco. Broncos are still going for pretty large amounts over MSRP, but not nearly as much as they were upon initial release. But what's happening with the Bronco Raptor that didn't happen with prior specialty vehicles from Ford and from other manufacturers is people aren't biting. Like, it's crazy. Nobody is, like, literally nobody is buying the Bronco Raptors that are for sale for, even like $10,000, $20,000 over sticker. People aren't biting. And there are people that are asking like 2 times MSRP. Like they think that we're still in that market and we're just not in that market. And so as you can see, again, I'm just using it as an example, even specialty items just don't have the pricing power that they had in the past. And so on those specialty items, I wouldn't pay anything over MSRP at this point. It's just not worth it. The value's not there anymore. And so any amount that you pay over MSRP for these special items is going to be erased within the next 6 to 12 months. Like obviously can't predict the future, but I would be shocked if it was anything but that with what has been happening within the market. And then the last piece of advice is I probably wouldn't buy a car unless you can pay cash for it right now, because with how high interest rates are, the amount of interest that you're going to be paying on a car is pretty crazy. I understand there are situations where like you need a new car, but you need to be honest with yourself. Do you really need a new car? And if you don't really need a new car, then I would wait until you have enough cash on hand to pay for that car in full. Now, in the past, I would recommend people to actually finance because, again, interest rates were really low and you could actually invest that money and make more money with it than what you were paying as an interest rate. But that's not what's happening right now because the stock market is just absolutely horrible right now. Unless you're like shorting everything, then you definitely have lost money this year. And like any sort of like, investment asset, including homes are at this point are starting to decline. And so it's not like you can take that money that you would have spent on that car and, gotten an auto loan basically and invest it into something and made more money at this point. It's just not happening right now. And so the best way to purchase a car right now, frankly, is just to do cash, which again, I understand isn't feasible for everyone, but that's just what I would do with how high interest rates are and with everything that is happening in the general market. That kind of sums things up for today's video. And again, understand that you can now negotiate. Paying cash is probably the best thing you can do right now. Don't pay over MSRP for anything, even if the hype is high. It's just not worth it at this point. And I know, super simplistic advice after a very long explanation, but hopefully that helps you guys out. Again, if you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe. I post videos like this every single day. I'll see you.